Namaste. This is Jayachandran again with the fourth edition of my series on restarting tourism along with COVID. In fact, post-COVID is how we all discuss all this time. But the COVID impact is still on even after it is almost a year and a half since the pandemic has struck the world. Many of the discussions which is going on in the tourism industry talks about a new travel trade and tourism practices will have to emerge to accommodate and adapt to the situations which has brought due to the COVID pandemic. Before we start thinking about preparing a new plan, it is very important to understand what was our existing system. In my today's message, I am trying to discuss about the most key factor in bringing out a tourism policy which should govern all tourism activities in a country. I am trying to find out the existing role of the tourism industry and the tourism administrators part of the government. It did not take much time to me to get a big shock to realize that tourism in our country is just an imaginary subject. It does not have any place in our administrative system or have any specific rules or act which define and describe tourism activities in our country. We being the second largest population in the world, one of the richest cultural heritage, and have been attracting millions of visitors from all around the world for several centuries, never ever thought of creating a framework in defining tourism activities in our country. Our constitution, which governs our nation, doesn't include or mention tourism as a subject. It is not included in the union list, state list, or the concurrent list, and not even in the residual list where all these topics which are not covered by the first three groups, state, union or concurrent list. Of course, our union government understood the need of some guidelines in the 1960s, and they have constituted a committee, and as per the recommendations, they have started constituting a National Tourism Development Corporation and later on state tourism development corporations. However, we did not really give much importance in tourism as a business at that time. There is a Ministry of Culture which also looked after the terms which comes under tourism. At that time, the reason for international travelers to visit India was Taj and the forts and palaces in the north. Archaeological Survey of India, who is the custodian of all these monuments, were asked to set up some guidelines to provide facilities at these monuments. Tourism wing of the Cultural Ministry was given the responsibility of preparing, printing and publishing necessary information booklets and brochures. Also, in creating awareness about Indian monuments and other interesting places, as union government has appointed information officers in almost every major western city, the capital cities, as India tourism officers. Until the 1980s, tourism department, as I mentioned earlier, was part of the Cultural Ministry. It did not had any responsibility in planning, preparing, or even organizing any tourism activity in the country. The emergence of beach destinations in Goa and also in Kerala, and the coming of the charter flights from Europe in the late 80s brought the need of a separate tourism department, because several permissions were sought by the charter companies too. That is the time that the tourism industry was seriously looking for an official department to look after their needs. The India Tourism Development Corporation in the earlier time was given the responsibility of running hotels in all major cities, and also in major tourism areas at that time they did conducted tours. In fact, they were very popular until 1990s, especially in Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, in Chennai, the Mahabalipuram tour. And similarly, some of the state tourism development corporations conducted tours in major cities in their own respective areas. Rajasthan, Delhi, Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, they were all not in a big way, but they were all in organizing conducted tours in their respective areas. But being under government and also not a priority of the government, these activities had its limitations. Updation of facilities, improvement of quality of service and infrastructure all suffered under these tourism development corporations, which basically acted as another on the government department, which lacked professionalism. In the beginning of 1990s onwards, slowly the tourism activities promoted through more private operators, there's a big shift started happening. Quality vehicles and more organized way of looking for private hotels where people could find better quality accommodation. And also through these operators, more information on facilities and options of holidaying came out in public. The red tapeism in the tourism development corporations really made this the relevance of the state tourism development corporations become so negligible in many of the states. In 1990s, the popularity which tourism got globally as a great medium of cultural exchange, a big foreign exchange earner, and also a generator of employment without producing any smoke, a smokeless, non-polluting industry. That's how tourism was known globally at that time. That made our national government also looking at improving these facilities. The decline of Kashmir and the civil war, the ethnic war of Sri Lanka created new openings in tourist movement, especially to the southern part of India, in beaches of Kerala and slowly entering into Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So South India slowly got into prominence, and Kerala was one of the smartest states among that, created a big wave among all Indian states by going international markets, creating a new brand, the God's own country. In fact, Kerala also had, apart from being a naturally beautiful place, in the 90s brought a very unique product to the world, the houseboat. The backwaters of Kerala, who were known through the early backpack travelers into their travel blogs, and this new experience where you can enjoy the beauty and see the life of the people, really was a big hit in the world of tourism in the late 90s onwards. It also gave a new opportunity for marketing companies exclusively in tourism. Until that time, most of the companies in advertisement were having commercial products as their major customers. But tourism marketing has got into a big proposition, especially through the government tourism departments. Interestingly, that is the only responsibility of the state and union tourism department in tourism activities, is to provide information wherever it is necessary. So using that, some big companies made these opportunities extremely well. Some of the smart copywriters and excellent visual media technologists in presenting our destinations, especially from Kerala, brought a lot of prizes to the state tourism. But seeing this as a channel to divert funds created big ideas in the tourism ministry. Suddenly, the allocation for tourism promotion grew into multifold, and naturally the interest generated for officials who can travel and become globetrotters if you are part of the tourism industry also brought some kind of an interest among bureaucrats and other officials to be part of the tourism department. In fact, tourism department in almost every state has become a very hot place for officials and also for some advertising companies. The lack of proper rules, guidelines to check, audit these expenses, and no exclusive system of collecting and computing the statistical data on tourism activities in the state, the revenue earned, the number of people traveled. No such evaluation was possible to do an audit on these expenditures. Tourism ministry in our union government, its major contribution so far to the tourism industry is including a system for recognition of tourism trade. This is for people who are already in tourism business. They should complete at least 1 year. They should have more than a couple of million rupees of turnover from tourism. They should have an office in the prominent place and the dimensions of the office. This all makes this recognition from tourism ministry. It did not really make any impact among the travel agents and tour operators initially. But later on, the tourism marketing subsidies, investment subsidies, they were brought up. Some of the travel agents went for this recognition. But apart from that, tourism ministry have no control over any tourism activities in the country or the travel agents in the country. In fact, they did not have, or still they don't have, any idea how many tour companies exist in our country. But apart from this, not many other activities or other areas where tourism ministry had involved in the tourism trade or tourism activities in the country. Another area which the tourism ministry entered at the union government level was classification of hotels. In the initial years, again, it was just a formality when you construct a 5-star hotel. Not many hotels really went for classification. But some of the southern Indian states made hotel classification a mandatory requirement to issue bar licenses for selling alcohol in their premises. This classification become a gold mine for at least for a few of the officials. We have been hearing a lot of stories on this. The only stakeholder who completely dependent on India tourism is the tour guides. In fact, this also is a gift from the Archaeological Survey of India to the Tourism Ministry, because tourist guides licenses are issued as per the Archaeological Survey of India's Act in 1959. But the selection, training and conducting refresher courses and all were entrusted later to the Tourism Ministry. But surprisingly, even this, the Ministry of Tourism did not take it any seriously. The importance of professional tour guiding became in big demand, and tour guides started getting better fees and recognition from agents and travelers. The Ministry of Tourism decided to get involved in it very recently. Unfortunately, the actions from Tourism Ministry to make changes in tour guide licensing without proper preparation, proper study, proper consultation with the trade, and also with a bad intention, got into a lot of legal conflicts with the existing tour guides in our country. Till now, the tour guides are selected through a very strict procedure through an entrance exam. They shortlist the number of applicants who are minimum qualification is graduation, a bachelor's degree from any recognized university, who is proficient in English or any other foreign language. And then after the entrance test, there is a 4 months training program and then a examination. Then only they are given the licenses to work as a regional level tour guide. So in our country being very vast and every region is so diversified with its culture, geographical and linguistic differences, it is not possible for one individual to be covering the entire country as a whole. So regionals, where 5 regions were created and licenses were given on a regional basis. But the interesting change which was brought by the ministry very recently is by bringing down the minimum requirement. The funniest fact about this is this toothless tourism ministry decided to change the entire process for the selection and qualification of the tour guides to the reasons totally unknown to any sensible persons. Several questions were asked to the ministry about this, but no legitimate and reasonable answer was given by the ministry yet. The questions were asked: what kind of a study, what kind of discussion among the stakeholders did the ministry conduct in deciding for these changes? Did the ministry estimated the footfall on all tourism destinations in the country and assessed the requirement or shortage of the number of tour guides required than the existing ones? When the whole world is looking for high quality of tour guides, what was the reason for downgrading the minimum qualification from a graduation from a university to a mere 10 plus, even when a region of India is still very diverse in its geographical, cultural, linguistical matters? how can a pan-India guide do his job when he is selected at a very low qualification of 10th grade? Is there any shortage of graduate applicants for becoming regional level guides in India? By introducing a new nomenclature as tourism facilitators, what the ministry intend to tell to the world? Because the most common terminology internationally known is a tour guide. So this change in nomenclature from guide to facilitator, what exactly the ministry intends? The Ministry of Tourism, Government of India has not come out with any satisfactory explanations yet. But some egoistic officials are in a mood to teach a lesson to the regional level guide community in our country. What good they are going to do to our country's prospects on one of the largest business enterprises in the world is yet to be known. What I am trying to say, this emphasizes the need of a proper legislation to be brought to our parliament to include tourism as a subject in the concurrent list, because it involves a lot of decisions from both center and the state governments. Tourism activities in the country must be legally defined along with its components. The ministry must be legally made responsible for collecting and compiling all data governing all research studies and training programs in producing tourism professionals. State departments must also be given similar responsibilities in ensuring safe, smooth conduct of tourism activity, ensuring and enhancing the quality of services provided, tourism product development, customer service, collecting feedback, and also creating necessary infrastructure. Marketing must be moved out of the responsibility of the Ministry of Tourism. It is definitely the job of people who create products and do the business of tourism. Tourism activity providers and their staff, tour marketing agencies, etc., must be enlisted by a registration under a tourism law, which will enable them with responsible tourism activities. And also it has been properly assessed by a legally bound system. I request all those who are involved in tourism as a business must come forward to have a serious discussion on this topic and must make our legislatures to take this seriously and make urgent decisions on. I'll be coming out with more different areas on survival, revival of tourism. The feedback and comments what I received will be discussed in my future messages. I request you please, your feedback, your comments, your criticism, so that can make a wider spectrum of ideas, and ultimately that can lead to a better future for all who are working in tourism. I also request kindly subscribe my channel, and we'll see you with the next edition soon. Thank you.